This hearing wasn't about budgets or bureaucracy. It was about belonging. Eric Sorensen looked Pete Hegseth straight in the eye and asked the question too many leaders still avoid. Do you believe gay veterans deserve our gratitude?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Secretary, to the General, for joining us today. Mr. Secretary, I'm hopeful that we can come to an agreement that we need both sides of the chambers working together for the betterment of the military. Do you believe that bipartisanship is essential to the mission of our armed forces, yes or no? Bipartisanship.
I think bipartisanship can be a wonderful thing.
Great. Because I didn't come to Congress with political baggage. I was called here because, I believe, and my constituents believe, that we need impartial, bipartisan people to find solutions to complex problems. But today, this nation is being pushed and pulled in so many different directions. I had a constituent this weekend that said, Eric, I don't even know what to believe anymore. Facts don't matter. Conspiracy theories run rampant like brush fires without anyone to quell them. So I'm hoping you can shoot straight from the hip with me. We're almost done. Do you have a targeted number of reductions in civilian personnel in our armed forces?
We have very diligently tried to identify the places where we might need to make changes, but for the most part, it's been a DRP process, a volunteer process of civilians to try to reduce the number for cost savings.
Is there an analysis that supports how you're coming up with these decisions?
We looked at about 8 to 10%, Congressman, but ultimately, everyone here acknowledges that the civilian size of the DoD has exploded over the last 20 years. And so where there are room for efficiencies, we are actively trying to find them and right-size those spots, because a lot of those places are not making us more nimble or faster at what we do. And what do we say to the people, but it's the numbers.
Right. What do we say to the people that have strived in their entire life? These are former retired members of the military working as civilians back home. What do we say to them?
Well, almost all of them took a voluntary DRP to separate.
Do you have a timeline for making these cuts?
Voluntary DRP to separate.
Do you have a timeline for making these cuts?
Like I said, almost all of them were volunteers who themselves decided to retire early.
Okay, I want to reset for just a moment. And I'm going to be honest with you. I learned a lot about military service from both of my grandpas who served and fought in World War II. My grandpa Sorensen was a proud Navy photographer. I have his photos, they're framed above my desk here on Capitol Hill. I learned to be proud of him. And from him, I learned how to become proud of veterans, which is why I want to talk about a different veteran, one who served in the Korean War from 1951 to 55. He served courageously like my grandpa Sorensen. But unlike my grandpa, this veteran was forced to resign from the Navy. I'm talking about Harvey Milk, because he was gay. You see, as a kid, all I wanted to be was the weatherman on TV. I learned that I could have gone into the Army or the Navy to learn meteorology, but someone like me wasn't allowed. They didn't want someone like me, Mr. Secretary. There wasn't anything that I could do to change myself or the way that my nation thought of me. And so I want to keep this very simple. Do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks?
Sir, the decision to rename the ship was...
I'm just asking, do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks? Yes or no?
If his service was deemed honorable, yes.
Yesterday, the Secretary of the Navy was in your seat. He couldn't give me a straight answer. I disagree with your leadership and his, because I believe that every veteran deserves our thanks. We all walk in the footsteps of leaders before us. And you may not find the value in the fact that many of those people are women with different skin colors, different backgrounds, different talents, immigrants, gay, straight, transgender, disabled. You may want to change it, but you can't. Because the America that you and I both serve is a place where everyone has the ability, or should have the ability, to grow up and be the hero their grandpa was. I wanted to do that when I was a kid. We're going back to that time. Gay kids like me, they don't want to go into the Army. They don't want to go into the Navy because you don't care for them. It's happening all over our country. My grandpa taught me never to judge the value of a veteran's service. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you learn to do the same in your capacity, and you can find it in your heart to make that part of your process. May God continue to watch over our troops, our veterans, and our military families. I yield back.
Cuts through the noise, through all the talking points, posturing, and political theater, and reminds us what public service is supposed to be about. That moment came when Congressman Eric Sorensen sat across from Secretary Hegseth. At first glance, it looked like another committee hearing, Microphones, nameplates, the hum of formality. But there was something different about this one. Because Sorensen didn't come to perform. He came to remind the country that representation isn't just a word you use during campaigns. It's a responsibility you carry every single day for the people who see themselves in your story. He didn't ask his questions to fill the record. He asked them to fill a silence that's existed for far too long. The silence around LGBTQ+ service members who gave everything to a country that didn't always give back. And when Sorensen looked up from his notes and met Hegseth's eyes, the room shifted. You could hear the frustration in his voice, but you could feel something even stronger. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the people who hold power over America's armed forces might finally understand that patriotism has no prerequisites. That service has no sexuality. That love of country cannot and should not ever be judged by who you love. Sorensen wasn't just talking policy. He was fighting for dignity. The quiet, uncelebrated dignity of those who serve, often unseen, often unheard. When Sorensen spoke, he didn't hide behind rhetoric. He didn't list statistics or quote studies. He told a story, not from a briefing book, but from his own heart. He spoke the name Harvey Milk, a man who served in the U.S. Navy, not dishonorably, not disobediently, but authentically, until the institution he served decided authenticity was unacceptable. Milk was forced out, not for what he did, but for who he was. That story could have ended in silence, but instead, Harvey Milk's life became a symbol, a call to action, an echo through time. And on that day, Sorensen answered that echo. He made it personal. He shared that he too was once that kid, young, patriotic, full of love for his country, and told he didn't belong. Told that his service wouldn't be wanted, his loyalty wouldn't be trusted, simply because of who he was. That confession wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was the kind of honesty politics almost never allows. The kind that cracks open the shield of performance and shows the human underneath. In that moment, Sorensen wasn't just a congressman. He was every young person who's ever looked at their country and wondered, do they really mean it when they say freedom for all? He was every gay soldier who saluted the flag while hiding who they were. Every sailor who wore the uniform with pride but carried fear in their heart. And by speaking his truth out loud, Sorensen turned vulnerability into courage, the kind that changes hearts, not just headlines. Secretary Hegseth leaned back, shifted papers, and did what so many officials do when confronted with moral clarity. He retreated into procedure. His words weren't cruel. They were worse. Empty. He spoke in qualifiers, in bureaucratic hedging, using phrases like, if his service was deemed honorable. That one word, if, landed like a stone in the room. Because what it said, without saying it, was that even now, even in 2025, some people still cannot bring themselves to recognize that LGBTQ+ veterans served honorably too. That their love, their discipline, their sacrifice are every bit as real as anyone else's. Hegseth's tone was the voice of a system that still draws invisible lines that separate the acceptable from the expendable. And Sorensen saw it. You could see it in his eyes. That sharp mix of anger and disappointment that only comes when you realize how deep the old habits still run. But instead of breaking, Sorensen pushed back. Calmly, steadily. He turned Hegseth's evasion into a mirror, one that reflected an uncomfortable truth about America's institutions. That even after policy has changed, the culture hasn't fully caught up. And that's what made the exchange so powerful. Because it wasn't just about one secretary's answer. It was about every system that still finds a way to say, you're welcome to serve, but not as who you are. That day, Sorensen forced the country to look at itself, and to ask, are we as free as we claim to be? By the end of that hearing, something larger had happened. Eric Sorensen had turned a simple exchange into a moment of moral clarity. He stood not just for himself, but for every soldier, sailor, and airman who ever had to hide their truth to serve their nation. For every veteran who never got a medal or a thank you because of prejudice disguised as policy. And he spoke directly to the next generation, the kids watching at home, wondering if there's still a place for them in America's story. His message was clear. There is. Because this country's greatness doesn't come from uniformity. It comes from diversity. It comes from the people who love this nation enough to demand that it live up to its own promise. Sorensen reminded us that being an American isn't about fitting in, it's about showing up. It's about believing that freedom means everyone, not everyone but you. He closed with a vision, one that's bigger than politics, bigger than partisanship. A vision of an America where every child can grow up and say, I can be the hero my grandpa was. Where courage isn't measured by conformity, but by authenticity. That's the America Sorensen stood for, and that's the America worth fighting for, every single day. So if you believe that every veteran deserves respect, if you believe equality isn't negotiable, if you believe the flag belongs to all of us, don't just scroll past. Share this story. Speak this truth. Keep pushing for the America we know is possible.